Jesus, we welcome your presence because we know you're here. And so, God, help us to acknowledge your presence. Help us to open up our eyes and our ears and our senses to know that you are present here. And so, Holy Spirit, we ask that you speak. God, we declare your glory. We declare your goodness and your faithfulness here, God. God, our journey began over a year ago, and we were wondering what will it all end up to be. And God, yet you have brought us here. We have a home. You have a home. So God, we give glory to you. Holy Spirit, we ask that you open up our hearts and our ears to hear and to comprehend. God, I pray for myself, and may I not simply be a speaker of your word, but a doer. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Some of you may know that I've coached basketball for over 16 years. And I've won a number of church league championships, and I've been involved in both the Chinese national travel teams in America for 18 and under. And I will tell you this, I know absolutely nothing about basketball. I'm not a basketball player. I suck at playing basketball. One, I'm out of shape. I can't shoot. I can't do anything but foul. I can give my 5 fouls in a game easily. There was one year I remember we were coaching, and they asked me, we only had 5 guys showed up to play, and I was the 5th man. And usually I'm the 12th man on the roster, so that basically means I never play. And and I'm the coach too. I make sure I never play. But I remember I played 40 minutes straight against the top team in the division. And after that, I said I'll never play again. But I first got involved coaching basketball in my home church in Chinatown. I knew nothing about basketball. All I knew was that I just loved God. At that time, I was a student at Naya College and beginning to study to be a pastor. And we had these bunch of street kids that started coming into the church. And so the church leadership had no idea what to do with them because, street kids coming to church, that's weird. Right? That's awkward. They don't know what to do with it. They can't relate with the church kids because there's church kids all goody two-shoes and worrying about the SATs and all that other stuff. But these church kids, they were rough, they were rugged, they cursed. They were just simply, they didn't know what to do with them. But these church kids, they love basketball. And of course, who did they ask? They asked me because I was rough, rugged as well. And they said, hey, Ron, I was wondering if you can work with these kids. They love basketball. Maybe you can coach them or something. We'll pay, and the church will pay for a fee for them to join the tournament. Well, why don't you work with them and share about God and in the midst of get to know them? I said, I know absolutely nothing about coaching basketball. So we were away at a retreat, and one of these street kids came to this retreat, and there was chit-chatting a little bit, and then all of a sudden he jumped. And I saw him jump, and I'm saying, this guy, he was like the Chinese Michael Jordan with the way that he got up. I saw him, all I knew was when he got up, his feet came up to my chest. And I was like, okay, I'm coaching. Once I saw him jump, I said, I got a superstar here. We're going to win. And next thing you know, we had a bunch of street kids. Street kids know how to play ball. The church kids don't know how to play ball. So street kids knew how to play ball, and they played. They were good. The first year we played, we got it. First year we were in the tournament, we got second place. And I knew absolutely nothing about coaching except yelling. That's what I did. Well, I yelled. And all I did was I yell at them. Okay? So, in the second year, we won the championship. Little did I know that was my journey in beginning to coach, because after I started ministry at a church and became a pastor, I started a basketball ministry as well. And guess what? I had church kids who wanted to play basketball. And they didn't know how to play basketball. And I said to myself, what am I going to do? And so I began to study DVDs from Coach K and to learn about the basic fundamental of basketball. Right? The simple art of boxing out. The simple art of shooting a proper jump shot. And now all these church kids, they're like, I'm going to do a crossover, all that stuff. They're watching, all these crazy things with the ball. I said, let's stick to the fundamentals. And as I was beginning to teach them the fundamentals, they resisted because they wanted to do all these cool things. But it was the fundamental that actually taught them how to win games. Over the years, I would say, I spent a lot of time coaching basketball, and I love coaching those who didn't know how to play. Because I got the opportunity of teaching the basic fundamental from passing, dribbling, shooting, playing defense. And it was amazing. And the fundamental developed their games. I remember there was one youth that was a church kid. He knew absolutely no way how to play basketball. But we taught him how to play fundamental, and he became pretty good. It was a pretty good player. And we praise God for that. But I think one of the things that most people neglect, and just like these church basketball players as well, they always want to do these cool things, but they never want to focus on the basic fundamentals of the game. In how to just shoot correctly with the proper form, to box out properly, to cross over properly, to dribble properly, to pass properly. Because they didn't think it was important. But it is the fundamental in which that establishes everything in which you do. And I believe likewise in life, it is the fundamental that establishes everything that we do in life. And I believe for most of us as Christians, we miss it. We miss the most basic fundamental principle of being a Christian. And that is everything that we have belongs to God. That is the most foundational, that is the most basic principle of what it means to be a Christian, is to understand that everything that we have belongs to God. Because most of us, as a Christian, we believe that we are owners of everything. That we are entitled for God to give us. Somebody once said this, that when whatever that God gives to us, we always say it's not enough. But whatever God asks of us, it's always too much. And the reason why we have this understanding and this thought and framework in how we live our life is because we do not understand the fundamental principle of life is this, that everything that we have belongs to God. And David, the passage that we're going to look at today, David understood this principle so well. For this was the foundation in which that he lived his life, that he understood that everything that he has belongs to God. All right, let me read the passage for us very quickly. First, Chronicles, chapter 29, and it is in verse 11 through 16. It reads, "Praise be to God, the God of our father Israel, for everlasting everlastings. Yours, Lord, is the greatness and the power, and the glory and the majesty and the splendor. For everything in heaven and earth is yours. Yours, Lord, is the kingdom. You are exalted as head over all. Wealth and honor come from you. You are the ruler of all things, and in your hands are strength and power to exalt and give strength to all. Now, our God, we give you thanks. Praise your glorious name. But who am I? Who are my people that we should be able to give as generously as this? Everything comes from you, and we have given you only what comes from your hand. We are foreigners and strangers in your sight, as were all our ancestors. Our days on earth are like shadows without hope. Lord our God, all this abundance that we have provided for the building of your temple, for your holy name, comes from your hand, and all of it belongs to you." David was the 8th son. Basically, the last son. And when you're the youngest child in those days, you really get not much. The oldest has double blessing, and you really don't get much. In fact, when David was a child, the people looked down at him. They didn't think he was a great warrior. They didn't think he'd become a great king. Who would ever thought that David would have been made king? And even when he was made king, it took him a long time to finally be king. And so here it is. We have this passage in 1 Chronicles 29. Let me set the context for us. David is living in this, he is firmly established as the king of Israel. And yet, when he sits on his throne and he looks out in his palace and he sees that God is still living in a tent, His heart was so moved and stirred that he wanted to do something to give God a resting place, a home. But God said, listen, there's too much blood in your hand. You can't build my temple. And so David began to prepare so that his son Solomon will build it. And he said, Solomon is too young, and he doesn't know what to do. And so David began to prepare everything so that Solomon can build the temple. Solomon had all the glory of building the temple, but it was David who understood the work that was involved. He established everything. He began to put everything together. And we're told that David gave out of his personal fortune a tremendous amount of gold, a tremendous amount of silver. Somebody once calculated that the amount worth of silver that David gave to building the temple of the Lord would cost over $400 million. The amount of gold that he gave to build the temple of the Lord would be worth about $1 billion in our day. David led by example, and when the elders of Israel saw what David did, they would move as well to likewise give. Right? And David began to help us to understand such a key principle in understanding about our relationship to God, that everything that we have belongs to God. Because to have an understanding of everything that we have belongs to God is an understanding between the difference between ownership and stewardship. Now let me explain ownership. Ownership is like my two girls. Their favorite word is mine. 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 When they have something they like, mine. When asked them to share, no, mine. I have it first. Mine. When they like mommy's food, they'll go and grab mommy's food and say, mine. That's ownership. Ownership says it belongs to me and I can do whatever I want with it. Stewardship says this: I'm a guest in a house. I've been invited to make myself at home. But because I'm a guest in the house, I'm not going to treat it like I own it, but I'm going to treat it with respect. I'm going to treat it as that somebody's going to come back and take it back. Right? It's like when we rent an Airbnb. We go in, we know that we're guests, although we pay for it. We know we're a guest at somebody's house, and we have a different perspective. We won't treat that place like we do at home. That's the difference between ownership and stewardship. And when we have this understanding that everything that we have belongs to God, we understand that our role that we are not owners, but we are simply stewards. Because everything that we have belongs to God. Because by declaring that everything that we have belongs to God, helps us to understand this. How we view things affects what we do with it. Right? How we view things affect what we do with it. If we view things as we are the owners of it, guess what? It will greatly affect what we do with it. Right? So if everything belongs to God, and that is the fundamental principle in which we operate, then it should greatly impact the way that we view things in life. It should greatly impact how we view time. If everything that we have belongs to God, it should greatly affect how we view time and what we do with it. I believe there's two types of people when it comes to time. Those who feel that there's never enough time, and those that feel that it's too much time. Right? Those who feel that there's never enough time are workaholics. They work hard, they always plan their thing around, I gotta get this done, I gotta get that done, this has to be put in place, very driven to accomplish tasks and things. And those who feel that there's too much time rarely feels like there's anything that they can do with their time. They either procrastinate it away in wondering, what can I do? But how we view time greatly affects how we view the fundamental principle of life. If everything that we have belongs to God, and we are called to be a steward, then we need to be a good steward with our time. And if we're called to be a good steward with our time, then the question we have to ask ourselves is, how well do we use our time? How well do we use our time? Are we a slave to our jobs? Are we a slave to the demands of other people? Are we a slave to the expectations that the world goes around with or without us? See, God taught us a very fundamental principle that He is the Lord of time when He established the Sabbath. He says, everything that you have belongs to me, including time. And by God establishing the Sabbath, He is reminding us that He is the owner and we're just the steward. How do we spend our time? Do we spend it just for ourselves, for our own pleasure, our own enjoyment, for the experiences that we want? We live in a generation right now that experience is king. So the more you get to experience, the more that you are alive, the more your life is real. But how do we spend our time? How do we view our time? Because if we do not view our time as it belongs to God, then it will affect what we do. And so the simple thing is to look at what we do and then to ask ourselves, do we really believe in the fundamental principle that our time belongs to God? If everything that we have belongs to God, then it should greatly affect how we view relationships. If everything that we have belongs to God, it also means that every relationship that comes into our life belongs to God. If we feel that we're our owner of these relationships, guess what do? We'll naturally abuse it. We'll naturally make these relationships about me. They should be there for me. I should have this. They should respond to what I like. I want to relate with them. I want them to love me. I want them to do this for me. I want to have it this way. How's our relationship with our family? How's our relationship with our spouse? How is our relationship with our friends? How is our relationship with our co-workers? How is our relationship with the people that we see every single day on our way to work? Because those are given by God as well. And we're called not to abuse it. We're not called to own it. But we're called to be good stewards of it. How are we relating with people? Do we view the people that are around us as that we're supposed to be good stewards with it? Because once again, how we view something affects what we do with it. So take a look at the relationships that you have. What are you doing with it? Because I will tell you very clearly, if you believe that the fundamental principle of life is everything that we have belongs to God. I believe that if everything that we have belongs to God, it should greatly also impact the way that we view our gifts and our talents. In this room, everyone has a talent. Everyone has a spiritual gift. That is God-given. That God has given that to you. God has given you different gifts to bring unity to the church, to glorify His name. But when we think and believe that we are owners of these talents and gifts, then we begin to use them selfishly. We begin to use them to elevate ourselves. Or we begin to use it only for our personal gain. But if everything that we have belongs to God and these gifts were given by God to us, these spiritual gifts are given to us by God, that it should greatly impact what we do with it. When I was in seminary, they said that as a pastor, I should be happy that 20% of the people in church are exercising their gift. That the goal is to just get 20%, because statistically they said you're pretty good if you could get 20%. It's called the 80-20 principle in business. Right? 20% of people doing the work, while 80% of people just sitting around. Right? That's a business principle. And so they said to me that, listen, you should be happy, as a pastor, you should be happy if you could drive your people, 20% of them, then you'll have a very good church. Something is wrong with that, don't you think? Because that puts in this principle that everything that we have belongs to me. My gifting, my talents, it belongs to me. But if we understand the fundamental principle of life, that everything that we have belongs to God, it should greatly affect the way that we view our gifts and what we do with it. Because as an owner, we just think about me. And as a steward, we know that as easily as it was given to us, it can be taken away. As easily as it has been given to us, it can be taken away. Time can be taken away. Most of us view time as almost eternal because we really don't have a good grasp of time. But every time you walk into a funeral, you will recognize and realize that everyone in that room recognizes who is in control of time. Not them. God is. Somehow, in the midst of death, that's the only time we can recognize that who is the master of time. The truth is this: everything that we have belongs to God. And if it does belong to God, it should affect the way that we view life. Because the way that we view life will affect what we do with it. I believe likewise that if everything that we have belongs to God, then it should greatly impact how we view our resources. God has given each and every single one of us many resources. We call it finance. We call it a job. And the interesting thing about finance is this. When it comes to money, we believe it's ours because we work for it. We clocked in and we clocked out. I work hard for my money, as the song says. I work hard for my money. I put in the work, I put in the effort, I get paid for it. So therefore, because I did it, it belongs to me. And I can choose what I do with it. It's correct. You work for it. You did put in the hours for it. Who gave you the air to breathe so that you can actually do that job? Who gave you the sun to come up so that you can actually do that job? Who gave you the resources, the natural resources, so that you can actually have a job? Even with all of our modern technology and computers, guess what? The iPhone is still dependent on some material, some natural sources to build those chips. Yes, we studied and we had a great education. Guess where those buildings are built on? They're built on the ground that God made. Yes, you work for it. Who gave you the health to do so? The older I get, the more realistic I am about my health, about life. It is fragile. Anything can happen and can be taken away. And ask Doc over there later. He'll let you know what he sees every single day in the year. That how fragile life is. So yes, we may work for it. We may clock in for it. But it is God who gave you. Those who are young, who just got out of school, will tell you how hard it is to find a job. They have college educations, they do well. Just ask them how hard it is for them to get a job in the field that they want. They study hard for 4 years and They go apply for jobs and just get turned away. It's not as easy as we think it is. Because everything that we have belongs to God. And if everything that we have belongs to God, it should greatly impact how we view our resources, our finance. So just take a look at what we do with our time. Just take a look at what we do with our relationships. Just take a look at what we do with our gifts and talents. Just take a look at what we do with our resources. Then ask yourself this question. Do you believe the fundamental principle of life? That everything that you have belongs to God. If not, something needs to change. It isn't God. It's us. David says here, who am I that you will allow me to give so generously? Who am I that you will bless me with so much so that I can give back to you, Lord? Such an amazing thought. Because that basically says this, that David knew that everything that he has belonged to God, and God blessed him with it. That when he trusts God, that God is the one that will bless him. That God is the one that will bless him. I've been a pastor for 16 years, and I will tell you, we as pastors, we're broke. I'm not a superstar pastor, so I don't have, a private jet. I don't have a mansion, and I don't have a book deal. So my salary isn't a few $1 million. I wish it was, but don't worry, I wouldn't buy books or a nice house. I'll just boat maybe. So I'm not a superstar pastor, and the worst part is I've been a pastor in the Chinese church for a long time. That basically means we're broke and broker. Because the mentality of being in a Chinese church as pastors, we got to keep our pastor humble. They're the servant of God. So we usually don't pay them very well. I'll tell you this. In the last 16 years, if I were to average out what I make, it's probably what I make now. Not very much. And that is, and most of you saw the budget report, you wonder how the heck do I survive? How do we as a family survive? How do I even own a house? Because at a very early stage in my walk with God, I believe in the fundamental principle that everything I have belongs to God. And if everything I have belongs to God, if I am faithful with it, if I am obedient with it, He will bless me and He will take care of me. Because Jesus says this, look at the sparrows and the birds in the field. Do they not have a home? And how much more does your Father in heaven loves you? I've always believed that. And God has always found a way to bless me. God has always found a way to bless me. Through loving parents, through loving people. When I went to study at Nyan College, my father disowned me because I was going to study to become a pastor. It basically means he cut me off to pay for school. I had no idea what to pay for school. At that time, tuition was about, it was more than 20 years ago. It was still expensive. Per semester with room and board, it came out to about $8,000. Right? Praise God, somehow I got a scholarship. I'm like, how the heck did I get a scholarship? They gave me a scholarship, so I got a scholarship. But it only covered half of it. So I figured, all right, I got to figure it out. Let me take a loan. So I took a loan, guess what? It only covered $2,000 of it. And I was still $2,000 short, and I was like, what the heck? God, you called me here, right? I'm at the financial, and they said, Ron, have you thought about taking another personal loan to figure this out? Because you got to somehow pay for this. And I had no clue what to do. And then I remember I was just having a conversation with someone in church, and I was sharing with him. I said, I need you to pray for me on this, because have to trust that God will provide, because if He called me to be a pastor, He's got to take care of us. And as He said He was going to pray for me, He said this afterwards. A few days after me, He came to me and said, Ron, don't worry about your finances. It's taken care of. He said, give me the bill. And so for 3 years I was at NIAC, my bill was paid. My car insurance, I had no money, that didn't work. My brother came to me and said, don't worry, I got your car insurance. And every week, he handed me money to get gas. He said, I got you. And every time when there was little hiccups, whether it came to paying for books, God always found a way to provide. And so, I've been a pastor for 16 years, and you ask me how the heck we own a house, I don't know. You ask me how the heck do we pay bills, I don't know. My wife is more stressed out than I am, because she manages the books. But my experience is because I know that everything I have belongs to God, that He will bless, He will give, because I don't own it. I just manage it for Him. I view that with my children, that they've been entrusted to me to take care of. I don't own them. I view that with my time, in how I use it. I don't own my time. I view that with my gifts. I don't own it. And I definitely view that with my finances. I don't own it. Because the fundamental principle of life says that everything that we have belongs to God. It means that we own nothing. We're just caretakers of what we have. That we're just caretakers of our time, of our relationship, of our gifts, of our resources. And so I'm going to invite Dave to come up and kind of lead us in the time of response. As God will have it, this is also our communion time as well. Because every time we take the bread and the cup, well, we're really declaring that Jesus is the owner of everything, because He's the one who gave us life. Every time we partake in that, we declare that He is Lord and we are not. And so, I get up here not to preach to us about giving, about the promise, fake promise, but to remind us that if everything that we have belongs to God, it should greatly impact how we view our life. Because when we understand that fundamental principle and we live in accordance to that, it aligns our whole life to God. And when our whole life is aligned to God, watch out, God says, watch me work. A life that is fully yielded to God, God is responsible. God basically says this: if we're willing to surrender and trust in Him, if there's anyone to blame, it is Him. He will take full responsibility of it. That's God. So imagine along with me the time that you have right now. Imagine if it was spent differently, as opposed to viewing that you own it, but that it belongs to God. Imagine you actually taking rest in the Sabbath. Imagine you actually become more productive with your time because you know that it belongs to God. Imagine the relationships in your life that you realize you don't own it, but it belongs to God. Imagine how radically different it will be because your perspective has changed about it and you begin to live out in accordance to that. Imagine all your spiritual gifts and your talents. Imagine that came up to the forefront. Imagine the impact that you will have in the lives of each and every single person in this room and around you. Imagine about your resources. Imagine if you actually trusted that it came from God and that He can do whatever you wanted with it and that you were willing to give it to Him. Imagine how radical is not stressful. It is one that you don't need to feel like, I got to figure it out. Because God will take full responsibility of everything that's surrendered to Him. Everything that we have belongs to God. So what are we going to do with it? God is inviting us to be a steward, not an owner. As easily as He gave us is as easily as we need to give it back to Him. And so as Dave is leading us into a time of response to God, and as you get your heart ready to take the communion, maybe what we need to reflect is this and confess before the Lord: God, I believe that I am an owner. And by believing that I am an owner, I basically believe that I am the master of the universe. And I declare that as sin. And I ask for you to forgive me. And then as you take the bread and wine, just look at it as that this is my covenant with God that He has given me. And that as a good and faithful Father, if I lack anything, He'll give me more. I just got to trust. And so as you take that, what you're doing, you're just saying, this is my faith that I'm taking. This is my declaration that I believe